Welcome. My name is Monica Worline, and it's my pleasure to invite you into this conversation and community focused on reimagining thriving learning environments. We've organized a 4-part conversation that focuses on a social architecture of thriving that we use in our classroom and that we think is also useful for reimagining thriving learning environments of all kinds. We'll share little glimpses into our Zoom sessions and invite you to this conversation, but truly it is meant to be an invitation to join a community who is puzzling together, imagining together, and reimagining together what our learning environments can look like and how they can help bring out the best in us and bring out the best learning that we have to offer for everyone who's coming together to learn together with us.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Lance.
Hi, Lance.
It should be fabulous.
Good morning, Marlis, if you're listening. Dana, good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Monica. Great to see you.
Great to see you too.
Stace, I think we should go ahead and get started. We have an action-packed hour. We are expecting a few more people to join us, but we want to make sure we take advantage of every minute that we have with you this morning. So I'd like us to get started first by thanking you for making the time today to be part of our conversation and for your interest in learning about what we're doing and helping us reimagine what learning could look like in an online community. We're going to start by first sharing a little bit about ourselves and then using some of the Zoom tools that are available to us to learn more about you. So what I'd like, if everyone could mute except members of the teaching team, that would be super helpful for us. That's a practice that we have with our students where sort of the order of business is to mute yourself at the very beginning, and something that we've gotten a habit of doing. But what I'd like to do is to kick everything off with Stacy, who is a member of our teaching team, sharing her both her role and her soul. It's a way that we introduce ourselves and invite our students to do the same. So Stacy.
Thanks, Betsy. I'm really eager to show off one of our daily habits. So, hey folks, my name is Stacy Semeka, and my role at the Center for Positive Organizations and in the Magnify program is to lead and gather students together to learn and use positive organizational scholarship ideas and practices by inviting in guest speakers to inspire folks, to help students one-on-one, to recruit students to our space, and to continue those relationships even after folks graduate from our programs. And I describe my role, my soul, as being energized by the love of my family and being connected with friends, and of course, milkshakes, the art of hand lettering, and I love some pop punk music as well. So I'll toss it now to Grace to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Grace. My role was as a student finishing up my master's program at Ross, and I have had the privilege of being a part of the Magnify program for the past 4 spring terms now. And the past 3 years, my role was as a peer coach on the teaching team. So I worked with the students in their partner org teams while they were embedded at a partner organization, helping assist and resource the students in any way that I could, and also helping to build community in our community throughout the past few years, which has been one of my favorite things I've done during my time as a student. And then my soul is that when I'm surrounded by other people, I'm really filled with joy, and I love to incorporate some kind of gratitude practice into my everyday life. And next, I will toss it to Monica.
Hello, everyone. I'm Monica Worline, and I'm really happy to be sharing this day with you. I'm happy to see so many faces from the POS community. My role is as co-instructor of the Magnify program and one of its founders, and on the kind of startup team of this program for undergraduates in positive organizational scholarship. And my soul is really, I would say, as a frustrated artist. So I try to bring a little bit of a poetic or artistic touch to everything that I do. And I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Betsy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Betsy Erwin, and like Monica, I was with Magnify from the beginning and have really enjoyed, it's really been a joy to watch it grow. I am both an instructor and I'm also a learning innovator through the Center for Positive Organizations. Magnify is one of many programs that we've designed to help engage students in the important work of POS. In terms of my soul, I guess I'm a cultivator or grower of things and people and experiences. I raise honeybees and chickens and flowers and family, and hopefully create for the students an experience where they feel that it's fertile soil for them to grow, to feel esteemed, and empowered to change the world. So with that, we'd like to learn more about you as our community, and we're going to do that through sharing one of the tools we often use in the classroom to help quickly engage the students in a topic, to learn their insights, to learn more about what they're thinking, to get their feelings on certain things, and that's through annotation. So if Stacy's going to share her screen. We're going to first show those of you who don't know how to annotate a slide in Zoom. This is a super powerful tool, very easy and fast, easier than using a poll or something like that, and it's very engaging. So the first step when you annotate a slide is when you see the green bar at the top or the side of your screen that says what screen you're seeing, and then view options in a little black box with white lettering. You click on view options, and in the scaffolding of view options, there's an opportunity to annotate. What we're going to ask you today is to pick the stamp function. Once you annotate this, the box that's under 2 is what you'll see. Choose the stamp function, and it can be any stamp of your choice. And we're going to ask you to annotate quickly 2 slides that we have available for you. And we'd ask you now to play with this slide and show us where in the world you're calling from. So you can put a heart, a star, anything you'd like on where it is. We've got Ann Arbor people coming. So our students had a blast with this, and often we ask, it's a way of helping them co-create our slides, and they would be really playful with lots of different ways of annotating it. And as I say, it's something that we can all watch grow together. It looks like a lot of our European people have decided to get the recording, which I can understand, but we've got lots of people from all over the US that I see. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's great for us to see that. We'd like now to learn, since today we're going to be talking about roles primarily, we'd like now to go to our next annotation slide and ask you to put in one of the circles the role that best describes you in terms of your formal role, what best describes you. So it's fun to see we have a little bit of everybody. That's great, and we're looking forward to sharing more of what we do with each of you, and hope that you can draw on either nuggets of work that we're doing in Zoom or the way that we're designing our class in a way that's useful to you.
All right, y'all. So every day we got started with our students with some headlines to keep them up to date about what's happening in our Zoom world. And we also always did a little tech check. So those are the 2 things I'll cross off our lists today. So our agenda today is to introduce you to our work, which we've gotten started with doing that. We're going to be spending today's session reimagining our role ecology, and we'll do some resource sharing as well. And then we also wanted to look ahead to this series. And we're here today on June 30th talking about roles, but come back again on July 7th to talk about routines, July 14th, we'll be gathering to talk about networks, and we'll wrap up on July 21st by talking about culture. So that's a quick look at today, and then also the headlines for this series together. Next up, I'm going to stop sharing my screen just to tell you guys a little bit more about some tech check stuff. So we always ask our students to turn on their video whenever it's possible. We know that sometimes where you are stops you from being able to do that, whether it's Wi-Fi or whatever the case, but as many of you that can, we'd love to see your face. That really helps us as instructors, and then your community members too, to be able to really collaborate together. So for those that can, please turn on your videos. We're going to be using a couple different views today too, and that are possible. You can see at the top of your Zoom window that there's a speaker view and a gallery view. We recommend gallery view to see as many people's faces as possible. That's our favorite view, and sometimes we'll spotlight speakers too. There's some other tools that folks might be new, to Zoom. So there's the mute and unmute button. So if maybe we put you into a pod, maybe you would need to unmute yourself to talk to one another. We might ask you to participate by using the chat function, which you can find in your bottom bar. And then we also ask folks to rename themselves often. And so that's what we're gonna do next. So I'm gonna pull up the next slide in our deck. So you'll see that you can scroll over your thumbnail, and there should be 3 dots in the corner. And once you click that, a menu will drop down to select rename. And we would love for you to change your name to include the phonetic pronunciation. So right now we've got an example from Betsy, and she helped us figure out how to say her name and figure out what she likes to be called by including her first name and then a phonetic or a rhyming word. So I might do something similar to Betsy and say, Stacy, stay, like you tell a dog to stay, sit, roll over, stay, see. I can see folks giving it a try.
This is fun. If you want to see everyone's rename and you can't see everyone's thumbnail, another thing you can do is use the participant panel and scroll up and down so you can see people in the participant panel. And while everyone's finishing their rename, I just want to acknowledge that we're using the chat to amplify one another on the team and to handle questions or observations as they arise. So we could be distracting you, in which case feel free to tune out of our chat. But we know that one of the engagement tools that our students loved, and the more they were invited to use it, the more different ways they found to participate, was to be talking to us and to each other in the chat while other things are also going on in the class.
One of the things that we discovered with the renaming is that not only did we learn the names of the students faster and have a better sense of what they wanted to be called in terms of their nicknames, but we were able to use the renaming function in lots of other ways for learning. Whether it was a strength that they were engaged in that day, an activity that they participated in, a celebration, or their favorite animal. So we actively used, it was quite typical in our 3-hour classroom to have the rename function visible 3 or 4 times as a way of elevating the learning, both among the students and the teaching team. So now that you know about us, we know a little bit more about you, you know about sort of the Zoom functionality we're going to use today. I also wanted to spend a couple of minutes, and Stacy, if you could advance to the next slide, just giving you some formal features of the Magnify program. I know some of you on the call are very familiar with it, so I'm just going to take a few minutes to share what Magnify is. I did yesterday send a video out to everyone, which helped capture the energy of the program, but not the specifics of the program related to Magnify, how it was created and why it was created. So Magnify is a spring semester course which is a time of year that not all students are on campus. It's a half semester, so 6 credit hours, which is what Magnify is considered a full load. And most of our students take only Magnify. So they're deeply immersed in the work that we do with them, as if it was the only class they were taking during their semester. This year we had 46 students enrolled. It's our largest cohort. And given the challenges we faced related to moving such an engaging program online, we were really thrilled with that number and thrilled that they stuck with us, and they really benefited from it. It is something that when we show the video to students, and typically interest in the program is spread by word of mouth from our alums, that we really felt we needed to challenge ourselves in lots of ways to create a program that looked and felt like the Magnify in-person program feels online. So we knew that we had an important challenge ahead. This is the 6th year we've offered Magnify. We engage with a very important, or 2 components of the program. The first is an immersive classroom experience where they learn the science of positive organizational scholarship and thriving. And then the second is a deeply impactful action learning experience where the students are working hand in hand with organizations, up to 40 hours of field research, and then a final presentation that they give to our organizations. This year we had 9 organizations, which was also in excess of the number that we had targeted. So it was terrific to bring a lot of the work that we did in person into this online format and have the success that we did with it. Now I'd like to turn it over to Monica, who's going to share more about our learning objectives for the class and begin to talk about the important worker roles.
Yes, so I want to talk about the formal learning objectives of Magnify, but I also want to just first say that we are doing this session in a spirit of deep humility and also in a spirit of generosity, because we started from zero basically, and we had so much to learn. And we weren't even sure it was possible to run the course, much less have it turn out as a success. And so we are so glad to have a community of people joining together to have a conversation about these ideas. And we're in no way putting ourselves here as experts. We're just sharing what we did to get ourselves through, and thinking about how we can looking to the future, how we can build our skill and hold a community that's where all of us are building these skills. And some of you are probably far ahead of us. So let me acknowledge that. And while I was doing that, you had a chance to read these learning objectives that are showing on the screen. We are teaching the science and the foundations of positive organizational scholarship in this course, but the main engagement activities that we do are applying the concepts that the students are learning from their work in the classroom in 2 ways: in experiential workshops and interactions with an extended group of teachers and with each other, so that they know how to use the ideas in their own lives, and then partnering with organizations where they take what they're learning in the classroom and they try as field researchers to look for what they're seeing in our Magnify class in organizations that run the gamut from nonprofits to tech startups to large corporations to universities or academic medical centers. And as the students work in teams to do that, they also engage with a teaching team that we have improvised and created over the years to help the students do this well. And I want to touch on 2 so let's be good scholars here for a minute and let's define our terms. What are we talking about? When we say we're teaching thriving, We're defining thriving basically synonymously with how you might use the word flourishing if you're thinking of positive psychology. And that is thriving in context. So we're asking our students, and we are asking ourselves, to always be looking for the simultaneous co-creation of some marker of success, some measure of excellence about what we're doing together, and human well-being. And it's the joint co-creation of those two things that we regard as our measure of success, and that we're teaching the students to look for in the organizations and contexts we send them into. So we are always looking for new ways of making sure that the students are engaged in purposeful work, reflective work, discussion work, imagination work, as part of creating engaged learning. And we're always looking for new ways that we ourselves, and kind of holding hands with them, we can walk toward building the capability to live a good life, to focus on values, and to find ways to build capability to bring these ideas to life in our own worlds. So that's the joint production of human well-being and engaged learning is what we think we're doing when we're building a thriving learning community. And we can move from there to a framework that we use for thinking about this and designing about this. And if those of you who know me even a little bit will find this familiar. But this is work that comes out of collaboration with Jane Dutton, Peter Frost, Jason Canov, Jacobo Lilius, and members of the Compassion Lab more broadly, where we started writing and talking about social architectures a long time ago. And then we have continued to build and extrapolate that idea from just compassion to think about how we might think like designers of social architectures in all kinds of ways. So we use this social architecture framework with our students to equip them to go into new contexts and look for thriving. And we're going to show you how we do that over this series of conversations. But we also use this framework for ourselves to think like designers of our own work, and to make sure that we're looking at the flexible social structures in our own classrooms and using them to the fullest extent that we can imagine to create both well-being and engagement. And so we're structuring 4 conversations around the 4 aspects of this social architecture that we use when we design experiences for our students. And today we're starting off with roles. And one of the reasons that we're starting with roles is because roles is often where we start when we meet a new class, or we meet a new person or a new community. And the first moments that we are together are so important for all kinds of relational reasons, but also so important for establishing and setting a trajectory for a role ecology. That is the ecology that you want people to interact with you in the classroom. And so we have thought a lot about imagining and reimagining and crafting and recrafting a set of roles that make sense for Magnify. And all of you, if you're interested in positive organizational scholarship, know the work of Amy Wisniewski, Jane Dutton, Justin Berg, and others who've thought a lot about role crafting. So this will sound like us making use of that work as a part of the social architecture. Betsy had you annotate where you think you fit in the role ecology of a typical higher education institution. And we gave those roles pretty identifiable labels. But when we talk about Magnify, we really tried to craft a set of roles and a whole ecology of roles that sound a little bit different and spark a different set of meanings. So we have 3 overlapping types of roles here depicted on this very colorful slide. Starting on the left, You might call those guys students, but we think that they are learners in some times in their role. At other times, we're equipping them to function as field researchers, and we're giving them the skills and the language and the opportunity to take on that role. We also are teaching them how to become great alumni of our program by bringing back former students who have participated in the program almost every session to do a 10-minute drop-in interview to share how they're using what they learned in our program now, and to give the students a wide view of what they could do with what they're learning. And at the highest level, what we're trying to do is use what we know about roles and identities to craft not only a role as student, but an identity as a magnifier. And by having a name that we can give our program and then we can put on to our own role hats, it helps us cultivate an identity that gives people a way to grab on to what we're doing that transcends time and space. And it's something we actually used a lot when we moved from meeting in person to meeting in this kind of a format, because that shared role identity turned out to be such a resource to put us on the same side and to make us feel that the instructional team and the visitors and the alums and the students all had some kind of common purpose. And even though we had Wi-Fi problems and flooding and power outages and deaths and protests and coronavirus and everything else that happened in the course of these 6 weeks, and when we very importantly needed to enter in a serious conversation about race and racial injustice and racial dynamics on our own team and in our own class, it was partly that shared role and translated into a shared identity that gave us a sense of common purpose and helped us move through that in a constructive way. So in this middle role ecology, you have what you might call yourself a professor or an instructor, but we think sometimes we have instructor hat-ons, but often we have learner hat-ons. So hats on. So we have that also in common with our students and our coaches. We think of our role not just as sharing information, but sharing all kinds of resources, and also very often energizing and affirming and listening and shaping and guiding, rather than simply being sources of information delivery. And then on the right, you have a group of former students and staff members and other people who come our way that Betsy cultivates into this community, who serve as coaches, who serve as culture builders and culture carriers, and who serve as something like TAs or discussion leaders, although we talk about them as facilitators of conversations and as bringing together pods of small groups of students to do different kinds of tasks. So that's our Magnify role ecology. And a part of what we hope that spelling it out this way does in terms of reimagining is that it gives you new ways as you enter into a whole new relationship with technology and with your students. It gives you new ways to relate to yourself and what you're doing, and also to invite people, whether they have formal or informal positions, whether they're paid or volunteers, to invite them to enact different kinds of roles in new ways. And we've been amazed, I don't know why, we should know this from our scholarship, but seeing it in practice, right? We've been amazed at the ways that naming and labeling different kinds of roles and then inviting people to craft those roles in ways that make sense with us has generated a tremendous amount of resources for our own thriving as a teaching team and for the success and thriving of our community as a class.
What I'd like to talk about now is how we bring students in to reimagining their roles. We've talked about us as a teaching team and how we took a step back and designed our roles in new ways for online learning. But what I'd like to show now is how we did that with our students. We know that first moments matter. So at the very beginning of our class, we introduced a tool that we thought would be playful and familiar to them, which is called Flipgrid. It's basically TikTok for the classroom. So we knew it was something that they would be familiar with. And we asked them at the very first session, after modeling it ourselves, to create a 90-second Flipgrid video introducing their role in Soul. And like you might expect on day one, many of them described themselves as a student and where they lived and what year they were in and what program they were studying, and maybe contributed one small thing about their soul, liking to be with people or enjoying their families or something like that. But after giving them a taste of it, we challenged them to think about their roles in new ways. So we created another Flipgrid called the Humans of Magnify, where we gave them the opportunity to integrate their role as a student with their role outside of school. And that was just a few days later, and the TikTok or the Flipgrid exploded with ways that students were showing their vulnerability, their talents, their emerging talents, their hobbies, what they were making for dinner, and gave all of us a chance to see into their humanity. And we also shared ours as well. It's something we recognize that not all programs, that it works for all programs, but for us, it not only showed us as we are, acknowledging that we're working from home, that we have lives that come in to our day, especially when we're on Zoom for 4 hours a day, and acknowledging all that they were doing and growing outside of class. So we would love to share with you one of the Flipgrids for the Humans of Magnify. So this is week 2 of our 7-week program. We invited the students. They weren't required. Most participated. The Role in Soul introduction Flipgrid we made an assignment. So we were assured that everyone got in and used it. They were quick and early adopters of it. They knew instantly how to make it fun and useful. But we'd like to share with you one of our 46 Human of Magnify videos that we think will give you a taste of how this unlocks the way people share their role and identity with their classmates.
Hi, Magnify. So I'm not really doing anything that fun or cool today, but I wanted to contribute to the cause of this Humans of Magnify Flipgrid. So I'm going to be showing you a couple of cool and meaningful things around my apartment. So right above me is my picture wall full of little Polaroids. There's a lot of really nice memories up there that I love to just look at and reflect on and reminisce. Next up, we have this inspirational quote on the wall: "Dream it, wish it, do it." I love to live by these words. You might recognize this next spot. This is my workstation with leaves behind it. I really, really love these leaves. I wish they were real, but they're fake. And then here's my guitar. It has a Hannah Montana sticker on it. I got it from my uncle last Christmas, and I'm still kind of an amateur, but it's something I like to do to fill my free time. And then this one's kind of weird. I have like a little wall of sunglasses and just other types of fake glasses. I like to collect those, but also I don't really have a spot to put them. And there you have it, the tour of all of the relevant things in my apartment. I hope you enjoyed and have a good day.
So that's just one example. We had someone do a cooking class for us. Another woman sat down and played the piano, she said, for the first time in public, and played this beautiful song. And it's something that they're doing on their own time, but also giving all of us a window, maybe even more of a window into who they are as people than we would have in the traditional in-person classroom. So with that in mind, I'd like, now that you've heard about as a teaching team what we've done with roles and how we introduced roles to students, we'd like to hear from both Grace and Stacy about how they reimagined their roles with the online format.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, when I started to imagine being a coach virtually after spending the past 4 years in person with Magnify, it was a little bit intimidating at first, and I was worried I wouldn't be able to create a positive impact that I aim to create in our classroom. And I ended up being really excited about all of the new little roles that emerged and the creative ways that I could find to interact with our students. So, for example, one of the small things is I got the title of breakout room master or queen, as our students often said. So, while Monica and Betsy are leading class, I would be working behind the scenes to make sure our students were assigned to the correct pod or group, so that when we were ready for a smaller group discussion or activity, we could limit the transition time and they would be automatically placed and sent out into their groups for an activity. And I also often joined into those smaller breakout rooms as a facilitator or a listener, or to answer questions. And then I was able to often bring back questions or insights to our instructors or to the whole group, to bring some visibility to what was happening in those smaller discussions. In addition, I spent a lot of time watching those roll and soul videos that we were just talking about, to really get to know our students as best as I could without being able to meet them in person, and starting conversations that way based on what I learned about them. And I also spent time reaching out to students individually and paying attention to a lot of the really difficult challenges that many of our students were facing, such as having to evacuate their home because of the floods that happened in Michigan, or being really ill and waiting on their COVID test results. So, being a near peer and reaching out to students and supporting them in whatever way they might have needed was something that was really important to me in my role in this virtual format, and still paying attention to those things even though we can't see in person or walk around the tables in the classroom. And also, another thing I like to do is just offer to chat offline anytime students want to. And I had a lot of students reach out to me to have conversations outside of the classroom. And I also enjoyed sending virtual sugar cubes or notes of appreciation and gratitude to at least 5 students a day. I would usually aim for to kind of send them a note and appreciate the ways they were contributing to our community. So I'll toss it over to Stacy to talk about her role.
If I could have gotten to the reactions fast enough, I would have given you a little hand clap. So thanks for that, Grace. So this year, my role evolved in a couple different directions. I mentioned music as a part of my soul, and so usually I put my fingerprint a little bit on the playlist of our classroom, but this year, learning how to be an online DJ was fun. I've mastered the art of the fade in and the fade out, so it seems seamless, which is something we'll be sharing with you later in the series. But that was just one of my roles I think about as a welcome sign. Like Grace said, there was a lot of noticing because we didn't get to be with them in the same space. We had to take on this new hat and new lens of noticing folks through the responses they were giving, through if maybe they weren't showing their video for the first time the whole semester. So we took on a new noticing role that felt different than if we were meeting in person. I took on the role of tech responder. Tech is always important, and I like to think about myself as a tech whisperer, but there were a whole new set of tech things that would pop up and might stand in the way, might be a boundary of really being present in class that day. So we set up lots of ways for the students to get in touch. So I always had my eyes on the chat function in Zoom. Maybe students would email me. Maybe they would send me a text message. We used GroupMe to help communicate with one another. So really being sort of the tech first responder. I got to put on the hat of alumni host. Every year, we make sure we bring in alumni beyond our coaches like Grace. But this year, since we were doing it online, we could really expand our net instead of having folks having to be local. So this year we had an alumni visitor to grow our students' network and sort of give them role models of what post-Magnify looked like. And we had folks calling in from Ann Arbor to Taiwan. And so it was fun to be able to expand who could visit us remotely. And then I would say my last new sort of role expansion would be trust giver or substitute. There are so many roles that go into making this happen that if maybe Grace was serving students as a coach, I could step in as the breakout room master, or maybe one of our other coaches who managed paying attention to the chat was putting on her role as student noticer and coach, so I could step in and keep an eye on the chat instead. And so trusting that folks could do a good job and that they could trust me to step in if they were wearing one of their many other hats. So that's sort of a look into the kind of other roles that I flexed into this year. And I know there's a lot more that Betsy and Monica had taken on too.
Thank you guys, both Grace and Stacy. Such important roles you played in us delivering the program. As Monica said, we know there's a lot of wisdom in the room, and we're anxious to learn from all of you too. So we're going to both introduce another tool that was very useful to us, and ask you to go into breakouts. We actually, in addition to like renaming ourselves with the Zoom function, we also imagine renaming some of the functionality of Zoom to make it more inviting for our students. So we called them pods rather than breakouts. You know, we use the kind of language that we would use in class to invite people to engage. So that's something that also just to point out. So we're going to put you in pods. We're going to have you in pods of 5 people. Monica, do you want to share the Jamboard? Were you going to, so that we could just show them what they're going to be working with? There's a Google tool called Jamboard, which has less functionality today than it did when we started Magnify. Some of you may be already familiar with it, but it used to be that you could have up to 50 people engaged in the Jamboard at one time, which is like a whiteboard where people can collaboratively add stickies. But the functionality of it has been limited to 25 participants now. So for that reason, we are going to ask, when you get into your breakout, to identify one member of your breakout group to contribute all of the sticky notes for your group, all of the ideas that you generated around this one question. How could you reimagine your role or role ecology to create a more thriving online experience? So the way that you do this is, if you could click, Monica, on the sticky note, so that maybe we could add one, just so they could see how it's done. You simply write in what it is that you want to leave on the board. Everyone will be working on the same board, and we'll leave this with you so you'll have it as a resource after class.
Thank you for the great work on this Jamboard. We can see that it's starting to come to life with ideas. And we wanted to mention, before we stop sharing this, one thing that Ryan also shouted out in the chat panel before the breakout rooms, that if you don't have a formalized role of TA, or if you can't afford to pay someone for these roles, we have found that students we have found that Marlis is saying this too, that students very willingly volunteer and adopt these roles. And the more that you find emergent roles that you need someone to adopt and invite the students to adopt them, the more that they will actually step in and do this. And the roles can be legitimated with names in ways that give them kind of currency that doesn't need to be paid for in some cases. In our class, we saw a culture committee emerge and name itself. We saw a happy hour gang emerge and name itself and take over happy hours that we knew nothing about, but our class was meeting without us. We had a couple of students who loved Zoom dancing, and with Stacy, the great DJ, playing music, they would lead Zoom dances on energy breaks. So all kinds of roles emerge, including community builder, as Marla said, to help with link access. We updated the access to that link right as your breakout room started. I apologize for that. We had actually a role on our team of checking our links and our link settings before every session. And that person isn't on our call today. So look, we missed it. These roles work. But we're going to send you off on time in 1 minute, but we have something to share first. So Grace, I think, is going to share a Padlet with you. And if you haven't used this tool, Padlet.com, it's another free or partially open. You have to pay after a certain number of Padlets, but you can make some for free, and students can make them as well. And we found this as a visual sharing tool and as a place to put links that students need during class and need to go back to. We found that we use these Padlets quite a lot. So this is a Padlet for you, and the link is going in the chat. This is going to be a resource we come back to every session. And on this Padlet, you'll see that we have made a Flipgrid for this community. We did Role and Soul introductions, and we've created a Role and Soul introduction space for you. So if you would like to put Flipgrid on your phone, it's very easy to record right from your phone, and share your Role and Soul introduction with this community. It'll help us get to know each other. You can check out what we're teaching and try it out for yourself and see if this is something you would want to use in your teaching. And then if we go back to the Padlet, Grace, the other things you'll find on this Padlet, and as I said, we will grow it. The slides from today are downloadable from this Padlet. There are other topics on our Flipgrid. If you want to make more videos, you can see other topics. The syllabus for our class is downloadable from this Flipgrid. And we've created a really simple role ecology worksheet. That's just a PowerPoint slide, colorful, as is our Magnify style, with some fillable spaces where you could use this idea of role crafting in relation to thriving, and play around for yourself with naming these roles and naming the emergent roles that you would need in your teaching, and naming them in a way that calls attention to the joint production of well-being and engaged learning. So we invite you to play around with this Padlet, and we invite you to come back for our next session, because we've just gotten started with talking about the many experiments we tried as we spent all day, every day with our students for the past 7 weeks.
So with that, we'll say so long for now. Hopefully we'll see you next Tuesday. Let us know if you have any questions in the meantime, and we hope you have fun exploring all the resources on Padlet.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, you guys. Bye, all.